All right. So let's move on to some implementation. To kind of just bring to the surface one of the things mentioned in that video. She talks about this concept, neuroplasticity. She talks about how we do an action over and over again, and that becomes a stronger neural pathway. A much more common way of thinking about this would be what? We talk about, we have these all the time.
Like habits?
Habits, exactly. And so neuroplasticity is essentially the anatomic, what's happening physiologically when our behavior is expressing our habits. Our habits are, we practice our habits because of those established neural pathways. And essentially, the concept that I hope you guys are taking away from that video is that you can change your habits, first intentionally, but then they become second nature because of neuroplasticity. All right? So that becomes very important when we talk about emotional intelligence and why. So, discuss. We're going to move on. We've finished up a good deal of input here. We want to integrate. In integration, we're taking this input and we are applying it to our work. So we're going to work with this material. All right, so discuss for me, how can we increase or decrease our emotional intelligence? Consider the following. What does neuroplasticity have to do with emotional intelligence? And what implications does this have on the correlation between one's behavior and the development of their EQ? Okay? So you can discuss as a table group, and then we'll throw some ideas out there. And this is our second to last question. We're focusing first on the personal, and then we're going to move to a social question.
I guess what I got from that is that if you're feeling a strong emotion and you recognize what you need to do to control this emotion, like something that can maybe calm you down or something like that, or just something to think about it, if you just keep practicing those things, that'll help you maybe step away from the situation, calm down, and it just becomes a habit.
You have to be aware of your habits enough to be able to be like, okay, I like.
Yeah, and then be intentional about changing.
So that helps you, and you keep doing it until you get better at it, I guess.
It is involved in you being able to change yourself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And know yourself enough to change yourself. And then I think that's
The light bulb just went off.
I feel like also the correlation between one's behavior and their development age is kind of cool, especially for like us as like mostly hands-on learners, because
You
it's
see
definitely
results
like a hands-on process. Like you know, like when it comes to your IQ, it is as well, I guess, but like you're studying or something like that. But like with emotional intelligence, you are the biggest component in your process. So like being able to be like, okay, I'm actively going to change myself. You know, so I feel like
your minds are similar.
It seems almost the same as like learning any new activity, or like, for example, becoming more physically fit.
yeah.
Like I have to tell myself that I'm going to go to the gym, and then I'm going to do it. And then you get into that habit.
Yeah, that's the first example that I thought of too. Because like the first month of working out is so hard, but then like
Once
then
you
it
get
becomes your favorite part.
All right, let's bring our thoughts together. Can I get somebody from group 2 to maybe summarize some of the ideas you guys were talking about?
We said, I guess, if you understand, if you start to understand your emotions and realize what can help you control these emotions, something like, I guess there's a picture up there that showed meditation. If you recognize that something like that helps you and you keep practicing it, like they said, you become stronger at those kind of things, and it can become second nature, or I guess whatever it is that helps you self-regulate in that way.
So a practice to increase one of these 4 components of emotional intelligence is going to become more and more habitual and second nature. Therefore increases your emotional intelligence. Yep. I think you guys hit a really key word, which is practice. Anything else to build off of that or add something new? Group one?
Yeah, one.
You guys have
Well, we
one
kind of
more.
talked about how it's interesting because you kind of need a basis of regulation, of self-regulation to build off of. Since you have to know
Yeah.
a certain amount to practice that to get better at it.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a really good
Right.
point. I don't have an answer for that.
Yeah,
I just
no,
think
it's
that's
just
I just think that's a really
interesting.
good point. So self-regulation is required to really improve any of these things.
Yeah.
So it's almost like if we were to build a pyramid of what you need for emotional intelligence, maybe we'd start with self-regulation.
Yeah.
But then could you argue that you can't self-regulate without being self-aware?
Yeah.
Yeah, self-aware for
Um,
sure.
So yeah, again, we're kind of snaking around the quadrant of figuring out what needs to happen first, but they're all interconnected. So the practice requires self-regulation, and self-regulation requires awareness. Yeah.
Yeah. Before you
And-
can even build those new pathways.
Yeah, and this you mentioned meditation, which is like one of the very first thing that's going to be suggested to like help us practice awareness. So it is like it's cyclical, but the good thing is you can start at any one of these points, and nobody is starting from nothing, because there are established structures or frameworks that we can use to practice. That helps get us started with self-regulation. Like literally read the paper and just like follow it step by step, and you're starting those neural pathways. But again, all this is taking place at the same time, and so wherever we start, it's going to benefit each of those four components. Okay? So we have way more content in this. I actually texted or have a text ready for you all. I'm going to go ahead and send this text to you. This text contains a self-evaluation form. Your homework for the class, for our next class that we won't be having, is to. Did you guys get that link? Okay. So if you go to that link, that's going to walk you through a simplified form of assessment of your emotional intelligence. It's going to give you a score in each of those four categories. I did mine in about 5 minutes, and I was actually pretty surprised, like how brutal it was in terms of pegging me pretty well. And so I don't know, you may find that, you also may not find that. You'll notice when you do submit it, it says this particular test has not been scientifically researched. And so they don't have any scientific data to suggest that what you're tapping through is really, well documented or well established. But it is a tool that you can use as just kind of probing your own thought of what could you be looking at in terms of your own emotional intelligence, or what they call EQ, emotional intelligence quotient. So I will ask. I want us to. This question is optional. So by a show of hands, this question is our integration. And if we were going to be in a class setting where the bell's ringing and you guys got to go right now, I would say let's read this question and think about it at home. We'll talk about it next class. But this is our fourth and final part of our learning task, which is integration. And so that's taking the knowledge we learned and applied in our work. And now, so we have a good understanding of what the concept is. Now, how do we take that into our everyday life? and let's see some transfer of our knowledge so that we can have an impact in our environment, in our community, which ultimately is the purpose of any form of learning. And so, my question is to think of ECOS as a brain. All right, we're going to go kind of metaphorical here. But think of ECOS as a brain. The prefrontal cortex is, and this is a stretch maybe here, so just bear with me, but the prefrontal cortex is the administration team because they have the decision-making power. The limbic system is and I know you all have excellent decision-making power, and unfortunately you don't get to exercise that all the time. So that's why this maybe fits the analogy a little bit better. But you all are the people on the ground working, sensing, feeling, and also implementing our work. And so in that way, you all represent this transfer of the sensory nerves between the limbic system and our senses. Okay. If we take the idea of emotional intelligence, meaning the communication and regulation, effective regulation between the prefrontal cortex and the limbic system, what are the hurdles that get in the way of that good communication, and what practices do we need to take to overcome those hurdles? So I know we're getting a little bit metaphorical here, but in terms of the concept remains the same, and this is somewhat common practice in organizational behavior. What is true for the individual also impacts the organization as a whole. And so as we are thinking through this emotional intelligence for ourselves, how does this apply to our work setting? Okay. That's all the time we have. So if you guys want to spend another few minutes discussing that, we can. Otherwise, we can wrap up there, and that can be food for thought to take home. What do you guys think? By a show of hands, who would like to spend 5 minutes, 10 minutes talking about this question? Who wants to fill out a quick evaluation and get on the road? Who votes evaluation? Let's get out of here. Okay. Let's do the evaluation. Anybody that wants to talk about this more, we can stick around and discuss. Also, that conversation can continue at our next learning station, just down the road, our secondary classroom. All right. Thank you guys again. Any questions right now on what we covered? All right. Let me give you these evals. These evaluations are for me, and I have to turn these into my teacher. And also my classmates will be watching this video and filling out these evaluations on me too. So they get to grill me.
Are you getting these results this summer?
No, they're just for you. Yeah.
That's real fast.
That's pretty bad, Charlie.
It was a fancy name in the beginning.
So you have to change it?